Hello, this is going to be a guide explaining how to play Valor Support Luminary in WvW World. If you've heard people talk about Luminary having 100% stability uptime, this is the build and how to play it. There is timestamps in the description below for each section if you're looking for certain content. This build will focus on Valor Support Luminary, but I'll quickly address the existence of Honor Support Luminary. This is another popular support Lumi build which takes the Honor trait line over Valor. This build would focus more on cover boon output and healing, compared to Valor that focuses on stability and resistance uptime. Both of these builds are viable, but if you're playing Organized WvW World, you should find out what your commander wants you to run for your comp. If you're doing any pug tag rating, I'd certainly default to Valor since resistance and stab are vital boons in WvW World, and you can rely less on a pug party to provide them. For traits, we're running Valor 133, Virtues 323, and Luminary 111. I would take these traits as the default, however if you find your subgroup needs more condition cleanse, you could take the middle trait Purging Light for extra condition cleanse. Previously I'd also considered taking the bottom left trait if you needed additional healing. However, in the January 13th balance patch they nerfed the healing modifiers and base healing on Luminary's Blessing quite a lot, so I don't think this trait is worthwhile anymore. There is 4 extra traits I want to bring extra attention to since they're pivotal in the way that Valor Luminary plays. The first is the bottom middle trait of Valor, Communal Defenses. This says blocking an attack grants Aegis to nearby allies and has an internal cooldown of 15 seconds. The second trait is the bottom last trait in Valor, Tenacious Defense. Aegis you grant reduces the recharge time of Virtue Skill 3 by 1 second when it blocks an attack. The third trait is the bottom last trait in Virtues, Indomitable Courage. The active effect of Virtue Skill 3 breaks stuns and grants stability to nearby allies. Its passive effect gains a shorter interval. The last trait is the top Grandmaster trait in Luminary, Illuminating Inspiration. Reduce the recharge of your Virtue skills when you equip a Radiant weapon. On the launch of Visions of Eternity, this was reduced by 4 seconds per weapon equipped. This is now being nerfed twice, down to reducing it by 2 seconds per weapon equipped. For utility skills, we take the Luminary Heal Resolute Stance, Stand Your Ground, and Hallowed Ground. The final utility slot can either be Stalwart Stance or Valorous Stance. Since Valorous Stance got nerfed to an extra 10 seconds on its cooldown, I find myself often defaulting to Stalwart Stance now. For elites, my default is Feel My Wrath, but if you are learning Luminary and you are doing this as a sole stability provider, I would choose to take Renewed Focus in case you make a mistake, so that you could refresh your F3 to have another stability cooldown. When it comes to gear, there's many options of what you can run, but I want to make sure I get to 100% boon duration for better boon output. And if you're doing this as a solo stab provider, I would highly recommend that you have a mace main hand and a shield offhand, but they don't have to be on the same weapon set. This is because mace 3 is a source of Aegis to help you farm your F3 quicker, and so is shield 4. For your other weapon set, I'm running a staff with a Sigil of Bounty, and you'll need that Sigil of Bounty to get to this 100% boon duration with 25 stacks. But you could also run other weapon sets such as Axe Torch, etc., or even merge these two together. For everything else, I'm running Minstrels on everything. I'm running Concentration and Infusions and Superior Rune of the Water. However, other rune combinations that give you the 25% boon duration are also viable, such as Zephyrite and Herald. And for Relic, I'm running Relic of Antitoxin. However, other good options would be Phoebe, Flock, or Pack. For food, I'm running fruit salad with mint garnish. I personally prefer the outgoing healing power over the spice fruit salad, which has the 10% damage reduction, but both are fine, both give the same stats. And I'm running peppermint oil, which has concentration equal to your precision and concentration equal to your healing power. And this is both needed to get yourself to that 100% boon duration. The basic premise of this build is to use our F3 as much as possible, and you can see this has a 38-second cooldown. We can reduce this through the use of our traits by providing Aegis and reducing the F3 cooldown with Tenacious Defense, and by using our Forge skills and reducing them by 2 seconds per skill use. This still, however, will not allow you to maintain a permanent uptime with just this button. So we have to interchange each use of our F3 with another source of stability. That could be from someone else, or that could be from ourselves. And if we are doing the 100% stability rotation on Valor Luminary, that will be one of our skills of Stand Your Ground or Hallowed Ground. So the skills that are going to help us reduce our F3 is our Mace 3, which gives Aegis to 5 allies once we block an attack. And once each of those stacks of Aegis is consumed, it will remove 1 second from the cooldown of F3 per that. So it'll be 5 seconds in total. Same for our Shield 4. This is 5 stacks of Aegis, and this will reduce it by 5 seconds. Stalwart Stance, 5 stacks of Aegis, which will remove it by 5 seconds. Our Forge skills will remove it by 2 seconds each, except for our Forge 5. This is because this also provides Aegis, so this will reduce it by 7 seconds, 2 seconds from the weapon, 5 seconds from the Aegis. So as a Luminary, you have 4 Forge weapons when you open Forge. Each of these has 2 skills attached: Hammer, Staff, Blade, and Shield. We care about all of these skills because they all reduce our cooldown, but the actual effects of the skills that we care about as a support is going to be both casts of our staff, the initial cast of our hammer, and both casts of our shield. When we first use staff, we create a symbol which gives a lot of boons, and the recast is healing and condition cleanse. When we first use hammer 2, it's a CC, and a blast finisher. This means we can blast any of our light fields for an extra Clodny Cleanse. The first use of shield is a block, and the second is a stun. So, some Forge things that are good to know. When we open the Forge, if we use the first cast of a weapon, if we use another weapon, we lose the recast of the weapon. Also, the cooldown reduction of using a weapon has to complete the use of it. So things like the leap, if you cancel it early, you see you do not get the cooldown reduction. You must allow that leap to finish before you swap out a Radiant Forge in order to get the 2-second cooldown reduction from Illuminating Inspiration. Other things to note. When we use our Shield 5, you can cancel it because it gives the flip skill immediately for the channel block. So if you're stepping up trying to mitigate with Shield 5, make sure you don't press it again early. So don't spam the skill, because if you spam it, you block and you can immediately do the CC, you'll lose the channel block's value, and if you step up to try and mitigate, you'll end up taking substantial amount of damage when you do so. Also of note is that when you combo with Hammer 2, you give yourself Light Aura if you're running the Light Aura Cleanse trait, but also you can blast your own field to get an area Condi Cleanse by doing a Light Field with Staff 3's initial cast and Hammer 2's first cast. Another thing to note with Forge is that when we leave Forge with weapons active, it reduces the cooldown of re-entering Forge. This is important because we will typically only use 3 out of the 4 weapons, so that we don't front load our refresh on F3 and not have it up for our second or third loop. When I open the Forge and I close it immediately, you'll see it will have a 5-second cooldown. However, if I was to use multiple skills, such as 4, 3, 3, 2, which is my usual opener, you can see it has a 15-second cooldown. This can be some Luminary gameplay footage review. So of note, I have a Troubadour and a Harbinger in my party, both which provide a little bit of stability. So I'm dropping Staff 3 for Swiftness. I've got my F3 for stability on the approach. I cover boon with F1 and feel my wrath. I swap and get my Mace 2 on the ground for pulsing boons. I now Mace 3, now that the Aegis from my F3 has been consumed, I go straight into my Shroud. You can see that I've got extra stability here from someone. We've got 16 stacks. So at this point, usually in the middle of my Shroud rotation, if I haven't got stabbed from someone else, I'll be popping my Stand Your Ground, but we've got stabbed. So I'm double tapping my Staff 3 and then a Hammer 2 to pulse boons, Condi Cleanse, and then Hammer 2 to blast for more Condi Cleanse. I'm also de-targeting the enemy so that when I use my Shroud 4 here, that I don't leap into the enemy Zerg and get myself killed. Now that the boon of my stability starts to pulse, I will reapply with Stand Your Ground. At this moment, the commander calls to dodge through, but I've already started to cast my Hammer 2. So I Hammer 2 and I dodge through. Then I'm going to Shield 4 here for the Aegis. Still got stability uptime on everyone. So I F3 here, step back, Mace 2 for the cover boons, Mace 3 again. Here I should have swapped into my staff to get another symbol on the ground. I don't, it's just a misplay. I double tap staff for the boons and Condi Clans, hammer 2, same combo basically, double tapping 3 and then 2 once, and then into either 4 or 5. Now I'm using my 5 for the channel block. Of note here, my stability here runs out for a second, and I drop Hallowed, but I also leave my Forge a little bit early. Ideally, I should have dropped my Hallowed before I went into my Shield 5, and I should have waited for my Shroud 4 to come off cooldown to either get the next F3 by using my Stalwart stance for 5-second reduction with the Aegis, plus the 2 seconds for my Shroud 4, or at least letting my Shroud 4 recharge so I get the extra 5 seconds off my next one. But I leave with 1.3 seconds on that skill. Get the Hallowed down here. Unfortunately, my commander calls to dodge off, so I get very little value out of that Hallowed, but I have my F3 up, so we do F3, and I start farming up my F3 again with my Aegis procs. Boons are still fine at the moment. Go back into Forge to start farming it back up. Pop my Stand Your Ground because our stability starts to pulse. At this point, we move in. I've got my F3 coming off cooldown. It starts to pulse. I pop my F3 and then go and Mace 2 to get cover boons down. My Mace 2 goes off. Unfortunately, I eat a bad Corrupt immediately after the Mace 2 goes down, and it pulls stability from the middle of my bar, and then I get stunned. You can see the interrupt, but fortunately I still have my stun break available, so I use my AoE stun break, and then we start to forge these skills back up. And at this point I'm just checking the stability of my allies, since I know I have my F3 and my Stand Your Ground both coming off cooldown, but at this point the fight's over. But yes, we have both Stand Your Grounds ready, and we have F3 ready to continue the stability loop. If your group is calling to do fires before a fight, do not drop any symbols like Star 3 or Mace 2 or Axe 2, since this will give a light field and corrupt the fire fields. Instead, you can help out by swapping to Firebrand if safe to do so, to Tome 1 4, Tome 1 2, and then Staff 2 to blast and give might. When you swap back to Luminary, you'll lose the might, but your nearby allies will still retain it. Similarly, you could swap to Advance and pop Advance to give 40 seconds of Swiftness, and then swap back to Hallowed, and everyone will still retain the Swiftness if you're on your Luminary set. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll get to them when I can. And remember, always detarget your Shroud 4.